How are we doing, everyone? The Bulls are off today, and they definitely need it after playing in back-to-back games, but that doesn't stop this channel from continuing. And since last week we paused the Hot Take series as I had my guest Matt Pack on the channel, we're restarting the series back up. It's one of my favorite videos to do because I get to hear from you guys, and I enjoy creating interactive content with my viewers. So in today's video, we'll be going through your Bulls hot takes from this week and my reaction to them. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to leave your hot takes in the comments below to be included in future videos. So with that being said, let's get into some of these takes, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first take comes to us from Vucci. Zach Lavine signed with New Balance because he did not play good enough to sign with Jordan and Nike. No, first of all, Kawhi Leonard has a shoe deal with New Balance, and he's one of the best players in the world when he's healthy, of course. And New Balance as a company is really trying to rebrand themselves to compete with the likes of Nike and Adidas, and so doing so by throwing big money at big names in order to get there. I imagine New Balance gave Zach the best offer because they wanted another big name added to their portfolio. I don't think that was the case at all, that Zach just didn't get offers from Nike or other brands. He very well may have. It's just the offer from New Balance was too good to pass up. Next, we've got Cedric Valleys. Not only did we lose the Vucevic trade, but if we don't get good value out of the Portland pick, we also lost the Markkanen and Derrick Jones Jr. trade. Let me start with the Markkanen trade because I think people often forget that the Bulls could have lost Markkanen for nothing. He could have signed with a different team, and even though he was a restricted free agent, the Bulls had the ability to match to keep him or execute a sign-and trade, which of course they did. It's very hard to execute a sign-and trade, especially one involving 3 teams, because you have to get all parties to agree to said trade. And generally, when a team is looking to sign a player in free agency, why give up assets in return to get them? So the fact that the Bulls even got anything at all in the Markkanen trade negates any narrative that we lost this trade. I was actually shocked the Bulls pulled off a sign-and trade that not only got them the first-round pick, albeit a lottery-protected pick, but they also got Derrick Jones Jr., who provides a lot of value to the Bulls. Derrick Jones Jr. has been out of the rotation more recently with the addition of Patrick Williams back in the lineup, which I'm not a fan of. I would still prefer to see Derrick Jones Jr. get some minutes just because he's a versatile wing that can give you solid defense. But I also get it because there are only so many minutes to go around, and you obviously want to start ramping up Patrick Williams in time for the playoffs. But still, I want to see more of Derrick Jones Jr. Now, as far as the piece on the Bulls losing the Vucevic trade, I'm not going to go too into depth on that here because I made a separate video entirely on that topic. But in short, no, we did not lose the Vucevic trade. Because I've said before, as much as Vuce has underperformed this season relative to his All-Star season last year, you do not get DeMar DeRozan if you don't make the trade for Vucevic to show that you mean business in wanting to win now. You potentially don't even get Lonzo Ball at that rate. And above all this, it's not like Wendell Carter Jr. is balling out. Like, yes, he's having the best season of his career, and I still think Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be a great player in the NBA. And of course, the lottery pick that we sent the Magic, that turned into Franz Wagner, who has looked very nice as well. But how long will that last? And the first round pick next year that we owe the Magic will likely not be a lottery pick given the trajectory the Bulls are on, and it won't be as valuable as the previous pick that they got in 2021. Like, yes, it's been disappointing that Vuce isn't producing like we thought he would, but he's still averaging 18 points per game on 47% shooting and 11.3 rebounds. He's also having the best defensive season of his career. Like, this is still a very good basketball player. So no, we did not lose the Magic trade. Next, we've got Blake898. How about Zach Lavine and Coby White for Damian Lillard? I mean, I don't see how the Blazers go for this at all. It sounds like they're still very much committed to Lillard despite him being out most of the season due to an injury. And if they were going to trade him, they're probably going to want a much bigger package than just Zach Lavine and Coby White. And then for the Bulls, like, yeah, having Lillard and DeRozan paired together would be deadly. But I think there is something to be said of the fact that Lillard, before he was essentially shut down for the season, was not playing that well, at least to the level of what we expect of him. And you can't discount having a big injury like he's had at the age of 31, going to be 32 by the start of next season. Like, can we be sure that he's going to come back as the same superstar level player next season? I honestly can't say with confidence that he will. Not only that, but if you bring in Lillard, what does that do to Lonzo Ball's role? Again, I'm not saying I wouldn't take this deal if I'm the Bulls, and I would if it was presented to me. It's just something to consider. And again, can't see the Blazers even wanting this in return for Lillard, their franchise player. Next, we've got Marcelo Spirizzi. The Bulls will go all in for Ayton. They trade Lonzo, Vucevic, and Troy Brown Jr. for Ayton. Well, I don't doubt that the Bulls could try and go all in for Ayton. I actually think a lot of teams will, based on the Suns' reluctance to offer him an extension this past offseason. But I think at the end of the day, the Suns are going to offer him that max extension that he was looking for this upcoming offseason. I think they really wanted to see how he would do this year and make sure that last season wasn't a fluke and that he's really a big piece of the Suns team, which he is. Like, as important as Devin Booker and Chris Paul are and have been for that team, they wouldn't perform as well if they didn't have DeAndre Ayton. And it would be a big mistake on the Suns' part with how much success they have had in just the short time frame, really ever since the bubble, to just break up that team that I think would be terrible for their team chemistry and overall morale. So I can't see the Suns letting him go. But let's say in the event that they do and they make a sign and trade, and let's say the Bulls offer him the max extension he's looking for by way of a sign and trade, Lonzo, Vucevic, and Troy Brown Jr., it's kind of a lot, and I really don't see the Bulls giving up Lonzo that quickly, even for someone like DeAndre Ayton. Sure, I guess in theory you could say, well, Io will just take over that role at point guard, which I think he would be able to do well, but you're also setting yourself back a little bit at that position given Lonzo is more experienced, a better scorer than Io is, again, at least in the short term. Long term, I think Ayton is an upgrade over Vucevic, given Vucevic is 31, but at the same time, is Ayton worth committing a maximum contract to, especially when you're likely going to need to shell out a max contract to Zach Lavine as well. The timelines between Ayton and Lavine and DeRozan don't really line up with their respective ages. I'm not saying it can't work, but it makes things a little bit tricky. But either way, I think it's a moot point because the Suns are going to give Ayton his max extension. Next, we've got Joshua Roque. If the Bulls miss the playoffs, Zach and Billy will not be with this team next season. Zach, yes. Billy, no. I mean, if the Bulls do miss the playoffs, which they're not going to, they position themselves well enough to make it. In the unlikely event that they fall into the play-in territory, I still think that they're going to make the playoffs either way. I actually think Billy, if they were to miss the playoffs, should be gone. But I don't see this front office firing him that quickly. I could see them giving him one more shot. Part of the reason for that is because this front office was pretty gung-ho on Billy Donovan when they made that hire. Like, they were pretty adamant about going after him once he became available after the bubble, and they really kept doubling down on that point. So I think it would be more of a pride thing to not admit defeat like that and have him fired after this season if the Bulls miss the playoffs. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. But yeah, if the Bulls miss the playoffs, Zach is gone. And I mean that in the sense that it will be a mutual parting, because if the Bulls do in fact miss the playoffs and completely bomb in these last few games, a lot of that is going to be on Zach as one of the best players in the team. And Zach, because he wants to get to the playoffs, he wants to win. And if the Bulls fall again, he's going to want a change of scene somewhere else that is going to position him to win now. And I think for the Bulls, if they miss the playoffs, they're going to realize Zach isn't the answer as a player that you build around and look to go in another direction. Again, the Bulls are making the playoffs, so this is another moot point. Next, we've got Ijaz Abdullah. DeMar puts up a scoring streak as the pressure comes on while leading him to his first team All-NBA selection and leading the Bulls to third in the conference. Well, I think at this point, there is no way, regardless of what DeMar is doing and putting up insane scoring numbers, that he'll be able to get the Bulls to the 3 seed. There's just too much separation between the top 4 teams and the Bulls at the 5. Especially with only 6 games left in the season. There just aren't enough games for the Bulls to even make up that kind of ground to get up to third in the East. Like, even if the Bulls win out for the remainder of their schedule, you also need teams ahead of them to start losing. Like, do you really think the Bucks, Sixers, Celtics, or Heat are going to crash and burn for the last few games of the year? I just can't see it happening. On top of that, I think DeMar securing his first team All-NBA is likely out of the window at this point. I think he was definitely on that path to get first team until the All-Star break, but since then he's kind of come back down to earth a little bit, and because the Bulls record has also dipped, it's likely going to impact his All-NBA selection. I do think he'll make second team All-NBA though, no question. Next, we've got Spitfire 1940. The Bulls will face Philly, and Embiid won't be able to bully the Bulls for a full playoff series without the pieces that they traded away to the Nets. Harden will have a bad showing as well. Bulls will ultimately upset the 76ers in a 7-game series. So I assume you mean this would be for the first round, Bulls versus Sixers, which I guess is a big possibility given how tight things are between seeds 1 through 4. But let's say they do face each other. I don't know, man. I have a really hard time seeing the Bulls beating the Sixers in a series. This Sixers team just outworked and manhandled the Bulls in their 4 games this season. And sure, Embiid hasn't necessarily done that well in terms of making deep runs in the playoffs, even when having good pieces around him. And even the same goes for Harden, right? He has underperformed in the playoffs at times as well. But I have a really hard time seeing the Bulls beating Embiid with their current roster and how Vucevic has done against them. You also mentioned that Embiid won't be as successful with the pieces that the Sixers traded away to the Nets. I don't know about that. Like, Ben Simmons wasn't necessarily a piece that helped Embiid, and on top of that, they still managed to keep Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, and they added James Harden. I do think the Nets will win in that trade in the long run with the draft capital they got in return for an older player in James Harden. Obviously, Ben Simmons is a lot younger, but for this season, the Sixers improved after the trade, and outside of Seth Curry, who gave the Sixers some added scoring, I don't really see the pieces that they moved to the Nets are really being that impactful to the point where you would say the Bulls will be able to now beat the Sixers as a result. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end it there for this week. Appreciate all of you guys for submitting your takes, and feel free to leave any additional ones you have below. The Bulls are right back at it tomorrow, taking on the Clippers at the United Center. I'll have a live chat for that game, so be on the lookout for that. Until then, as always, guys, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.